The wind was sharp that morning, the kind that made men hunch into their coats and horses flick their ears. The little town of Willow Bend was waking slow, the sun just breaking over the red cliffs. Folks were sweeping porches, warming coffee, and minding their own, until a sound came drifting in from the treeline. It wasn't the usual rustle of deer or the distant yip of coyotes. This was hooves, slow, steady, deliberate, the kind of sound that made heads turn before the rider even appeared. Out from the pines came a sight that froze the street still. A painted horse, lean but proud, its hide a patchwork of chestnut and white, mane tangled with twigs. And on its back, a child, barefoot, wearing what looked like scraps of animal hide and frayed cloth. Long hair hung around her face, streaked with dirt, eyes like green glass catching the light. She didn't look scared, she didn't look curious, she looked like she had been here 1,000 times before, and belonged nowhere. Sheriff Amos Carter stepped off the boardwalk, his hand resting on the butt of his Colt but not drawing. "Where'd you come from, little miss?" he called out. The girl's gaze slid past him like he was just another tree in the forest. "I belong to no one," she said, her voice steady, almost too steady for a child. "And I'm leaving soon." It wasn't the words themselves that unsettled folks, it was the way she said them, like she wasn't talking about running away, but about something that was going to happen, something inevitable. Mrs. Hollins, the schoolteacher, stepped forward, her eyes full of concern. "Sweetheart, you must be hungry. Where are your parents?" The girl looked at her for a long moment, silent, as though weighing the worth of answering. "The woods are my parents," she answered finally. Then she pulled the reins slightly, and the horse shifted, restless, as if it too didn't want to linger. That was when Tom Riker, the blacksmith, whispered just loud enough for others to hear, "That's Painted Ghost. That horse belonged to Ben Hollard, went missing after Ben was found dead in the gulch 3 months back." A murmur spread through the onlookers. Some swore the gulch was cursed, others muttered that Hollard's death had been no accident. Sheriff Carter took a slow step closer. "Girl, I'm gonna have to ask you to dismount and tell me where you got that horse." The child's eyes hardened, narrowing just slightly. "You shouldn't ask questions you're not ready to hear answers to." And just like that, she tapped her heels, and the painted horse started down Main Street, unhurried, like they owned the road. Folks stepped aside, watching her disappear back into the pines. The rest of the day, Willow Bend buzzed like a kicked hornet's nest. The girl's words replayed in every mind. No one could agree on whether she was some runaway, an orphan, or something stranger. That night, Amos couldn't sleep. The wind outside had picked up, carrying with it the faint sound of hoofbeats, and something else. A howl, long and low, but not wolf and not coyote. It raised the hair on his arms. The next morning, a rancher named Caleb Moss came riding hard into town, pale as bone. He swore he'd seen her again, near the gulch, singing to the painted horse under the moonlight. She weren't singing words, Caleb said, voice shaking. It was, more like callin' something. "Made my horse back up without me even pullin' the reins." Sheriff Carter's jaw tightened. Too many whispers and too much fear could rot a town from the inside. He decided enough was enough. That evening, with the sun sinking behind the red cliffs, Carter saddled his bay and rode toward the gulch. The trail there wound through tall pines that whispered with the wind, shadows stretching long. The gulch was a wound in the earth, sheer cliffs dropping into a darkness that seemed to swallow sound. Carter tied his horse to a scrub pine and listened. At first, only the sigh of the breeze. Then, a hum, low, almost like a lullaby, but with a strange rhythm that didn't belong to any song he knew. He followed the sound down a narrow path carved by deer and time. There she was, sitting on the painted horse at the gulch's edge, eyes closed, hand resting on the animal's neck like she could hear its heartbeat in her palm. The horse's ears twitched, but it didn't move, as if anchored by her presence. "You shouldn't be here," Carter said softly. She opened her eyes and looked straight at him. "Neither should you. What's your name?" he asked, voice steady. She hesitated, then said, "Names are for people who stay." "Where are you going?" She looked over the gulch, eyes reflecting the dying light. "Somewhere they can't follow." "Who?" Carter pressed. Her gaze didn't waver. "The ones who took him." Carter frowned. "Took who?" She reached into a small leather pouch tied at her waist and pulled out something that made his stomach knot, a silver locket, tarnished with age. He knew it instantly. Ben Hollard had worn it, the day they'd found his body in the gulch, throat bruised like a rope had been there. Before he could speak, the wind surged, whirling dust and pine needles. The painted horse tossed its head, but the girl didn't flinch. She stepped closer to Carter and pressed the locket into his hand. "For you, so you'll remember I was real." He looked down at the locket, then back up, just in time to see her mount the horse in one swift, practiced motion. Wait, but the word was swallowed by the sound of pounding hooves. She was gone, the horse vanishing into the treeline as if the forest had opened to swallow them whole. Carter followed, crashing through branches, but when he reached the other side of the pines, there was nothing. No sound, no tracks, just the heavy, still air of a place that had been left behind. He rode back under a sky thick with stars, the locket heavy in his pocket. He didn't tell the townsfolk all of it, just enough to stop the wildest rumors. But at night, he kept turning the locket over in his hands, wondering what she meant about the ones who took him. Weeks passed. The town moved on, at least on the surface. But Carter never forgot the girl's eyes, or the way she had spoken with the calm certainty of someone who knew the world's hidden paths. Every now and then, on wind-cut nights, someone swore they heard it, the steady rhythm of a painted horse's hooves somewhere deep in the woods, and a girl's voice, humming to the dark. And those who heard it, they didn't always sleep well after. Some said she was still out there, moving through the pines, following trails no man could see. Some said she was chasing the ones who took Ben Hollard. And a few, quietly, when no one else could hear, whispered that maybe she wasn't chasing anything at all. Maybe she was leading something, straight toward Willow Bend.